Welcome to Easy Eats. My name is Chef Yves Dechaine, and today we're in the Greener Village's Learning Kitchen with Chef Patty Hollenberg, owner of Chess Piece, one of Fredericton's kind of landmark institutions now, I guess. Everyone knows about it, Patty. Thank you and welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Yves. It's a real treat to be here, and love Greener Village. I love the message behind it. Chess Piece is a huge supporter of Green Village, so
you are
pleasure to be on the show.
I know your day old croissants are a nice treat for people coming in through the lineup, and it's wonderful. So today you're going to show us how to make lava cake.
Going to make a lava cake, molten cake, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
And it's a super decadent. It's really easy, and I know that it's one of my Valentine's go-to. My wife is a chocoholic, and I only make molten cake this time of year. So.
Right. So pretty versatile too, to like change up as well too, for like different flavor profiles and whatnot. So once you get the basics down, you can take the training wheels off and have fun with it.
What's the first step?
Sweet. So first things first, we're going to grab the butter and the chocolate and get that melting in a bain-marie. If you don't have a double boiler, you could also use a microwave as well too. I like to think that microwaves actually get a bit of a bad rap in kitchens, but in the pastry world, it actually serves a nice little purpose for helping, speed up melting chocolate and melting butter and all those.
Well, that's it, and I think microwaves don't usually get a bad rap. It all depends on the type of restaurant you're working
steaks.
at.
We're not
Exactly,
cooking
no
steaks.
cooking steaks.
So we're just going to melt this, let this go on the stove for a little bit until it's about 80% melted.
Okay.
The residual heat from the chocolate and the butter will help just melt the remaining chocolate and butter.
And you also don't want that chocolate to be too hot when you're pouring it into your other ingredients, right?
Correct.
So while that's melting, Patty, tell us a little about your story. Where did you start out?
I went to culinary school in PEI. I went to the Culinary Institute of Canada. Graduated back in 2004, actually. I started in 2002. I did my culinary first and then went back and did my pastry arts kind of when they still had the summer programs.
Yeah.
So I went to school for like a full year nonstop.
Okay.
So I kind of doubled up. Moved to Calgary right after I graduated, and was there for almost 2 years. Worked at the River Cafe there. So it was a great institutional restaurant, constantly one of the top restaurants in the city, but was a really good place for me to apply not only the knowledge that I learned from school, but set me on a proper path. Start with good food, and you're going to finish with good food, right?
Right on. So you're the owner of Chess Piece. What made you decide to open up Chess Piece in Fredericton, seeing that you've kind of traveled the country a little bit?
There was no pastry shops in New Brunswick. They were really slim. There was, a lot of like the, old-timey bakeries, not, no fault of theirs, but like nothing, everything was really like home style and family operated. So it was like the opportunities were really slim to none. So I kind of realized that if I wanted to work where I wanted to work, I had to create where I wanted to work.
Absolutely.
Right? So we took a really big chance, and we seen a property in downtown Fredericton, and we knew that was the proper spot. There was no real like pastry shop, coffee shop at the time in Fredericton. So I spent a good solid year and a half actually building a business plan solely around 361 Queen Street, and rest is history.
You guys got the contract at the airport now, don't you?
We do, yeah. So, and that's pretty amazing, actually. After the pandemic, and last year with the closure of all these flights and whatnot, and people just feeling so isolated and alone and kind of distraught, it's really hopeful and exciting to be a part of these people like traveling again, because you seen the sparkle in people's eyes. Like they were so excited. A lot of mimosas were sold yesterday in celebration.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And it must be kind of nice or feel good that the first taste of Fredericton sometimes might be your food.
That's a big win for me. And Joanne Galland, the CEO of the Airport Authority, when they did their RFP, they really were wanting to strike it home that they didn't just want to put a Starbucks in there. They didn't just want to put a Tim Hortons in there. They really wanted something with some local flavor. I've always been a big fan and proponent of culinary traveling. Even when I spent, and super proud of the products that we grow here in New Brunswick. When I was in San Francisco, we did get the chance to eat at Bouchon. And I remember being so tickled pink when we sat down at the bar and we ordered some oysters, and there were Beausoleil oysters on the menu at Bouchon in San Francisco, in Yountville.
So you said that you had the pleasure of going and eating at Bouchon, and you had a Beausoleil oyster. So a Beausoleil oyster here from New Brunswick, your neck of the woods too, isn't it?
My neck of the woods. So Miramichi Bay, so cold Northumberland waters. The Acadian coastline is such a phenomenal home to seafood that is just top-notch, world top-notch. So I would call this like 80% done.
Okay, so you got the little knob of butter
in there. The little
in
knobs of butter, like your chocolate is residually hot here, so those little nubs, you just want to shut that off for
absolutely.
me. And I'm just going to put that aside, and then because I'm a little clumsy and I haven't had my coffee yet, I'm going to put that off to the side so I don't want to burn myself.
Perfect. Let's talk about the double boiler a little bit. So if you're doing it at home and you don't want to put it in the microwave, how much water should you have in that double boiler?
Just a couple of inches, really. You don't want the water to touch the bottom of the pot or the bottom of your bowl, just like an inch or two, just enough to create some heat and steam. You don't need to fill the pot up or anything like that.
No, and it's a gentle heat, right? And
yeah.
an even heat, I guess my next question is why couldn't we just do it right in the pot?
Chocolate has a really nasty habit of scorching because of the cocoa butter in it. It has a lower smoke point, so it can burn very easily. So, and that's where you get like it seizes up actually, and so we want to avoid that.
Our next step, chef.
Next, do our eggs and our sugar.
Sure thing. So we got our sugar right there.
Perfect.
And
we got 3 egg yolks and 3 whole eggs.
Lovely.
So right now we're just going to combine our eggs and our sugar, and we're going to put our whip attachment on here and whip this to what's referred to as a ribbon stage.
Why is it called ribbon stage?
It's the way that it flows and lands on the surface of
it kind
your
of ribbons
product.
out, right?
Yeah, so it kind of stays elevated. Part of baking as well too, a lot of people tend to think that sugar, people forget that sugar is actually a chemical and cooks in the same way as like an acid or salt, even for that example. So whenever I'm combining eggs and sugar, I'm always really mindful to do it in the last stage, and then that prevents you from getting little like clumps of cooked egg yolk. So I'm just gonna let this go on like medium high, let her go.
We'll be back after these few messages and while we let the eggs and sugar ribbon together. Welcome back to Easy Eats. Again, we're in the Greener Villages Learning Kitchen with Patty Hollenberg, owner of Chesapeake's Bakery, and we've got our eggs to ribbon stage right now.
Yeah.
I think all we have to do now is add a little bit of vanilla.
Yes.
So let's talk about vanilla, Chef. When's an appropriate time to use it? Is there good vanillas to use? Is there bad vanillas to use?
In my world, there's two different types of vanilla. There's good vanilla like vanilla beans, vanilla bean paste is what we use at the shop. Just because we go through so much of it, it's just easier and faster to go with that, or the vanilla extract. So when I use vanilla, I'm extremely intentional about how it's going to be used in the product. If you're using it with a strong flavored dish such as like chocolate, I would tend to use the vanilla extract because then it's more like a salt, it's more like a flavor addition, as opposed to, you can't taste the vanilla bean paste if you were to put this in here. So it's a way of chefs being food cost knowledgeable. Vanilla bean paste is something that I use passionately. So we've got our yolks and our eggs and sugar to a ribbon stage. As you can tell, it's increased significantly in volume.
Absolutely.
It's pale in color, and when I drop batter off my whisk and back into the mixture, it sits on the top of the batter.
So we're basically incorporating air into this. That's
100%.
the reason for the ribboning, right?
100%. We're gonna put this back in here, and we're gonna add our flour slowly. I like to do this. I know there's not a lot of flour in this, but I like to incorporate this slowly, like probably a third at a time.
And also make sure that you're not knocking any air out of the batter, is it?
Right. It's right now, I think a lot of people are a little nervous about deflating your eggs and your sugar. You can be a little less aggressive with it. Yeah. So what you're really wanting to do is just make sure that this is mixed enough so that there's no clumps of flour in it. I like to sift my flour before I add it to items, especially when you're dealing with the ribbon stage stuff like this. It just helps prevent flour clumps.
So I guess that was my next question. I mean, is sift or not to sift? I know that if I'm making any kind of patisserie or anything like that, then I definitely do sift it to make sure that there's no clumps that come in, because the moisture in the flour creates clumps and stuff like that. But when should you always sift, or is it a necessity?
A couple of different types of flours, right? So there's pastry flour, bread flour, and all-purpose flour. So bread flour will actually it's got a lower moisture content, so when you squish it in your hand, it won't clump together the same way. Pastry flour will, because there's a higher moisture content in it and less protein in it, it will tend to clump more often. So whenever I am using pastry flour particularly, it's always a good idea to sift it. I don't worry about sifting it flour if, say, I was making bread or something along those lines. So now that we've got our butter, see, it's all like melted, everything's all good to go. I'm just gonna turn this down to low, and I'm just gonna pour this in. And you can be a little aggressive with it too. The faster you pour your chocolate in, the less likely that you're gonna have those seized clumps that I was telling you about. I'm just gonna, as you can tell, it's all sitting at the bottom here. So I'm just gonna turn up the speed to medium, and just start mixing this and make sure that it's all well incorporated. And now I'm just gonna go in with my spatula and just pick up whatever leftover chocolate is at the bottom of my bowl. Presentation is super important. Yes, absolutely. I'd like to think that a lot of our products in our showcase are really beautiful, but they need to taste better than what they look.
Agreed. So let's talk about that. Your showcase. So you've kind of branched out from just that showcase, and now you've got a new spot right next to you guys. Explain to me that transition. How do you go from French pâtisserie to a nice kind of, like you said, it's not a deli because you're not serving sandwiches,
Right.
but you're putting out a deli meats and cheeses
Yeah.
and things like that. Talk to me about this new venture.
I knew that I needed actually to bring a lot more sustenance than just ice cream if I was going to open up a shop next door.
Yeah.
So I really started trying to think about what do we not have in Fredericton yet, and what is possible. Outside of the Boyce Farmers Market, there's no cheese shop
you're right.
in Fredericton. So that was just kind of a bit of a launch pad for me. So that was kind of where the catalyst for that kind of started.
Perfect. It's a great idea to kind of stretch that out. Are you going to be showcasing local New Brunswick cheeses and charcuterie?
Yes, Le Ferme de Diamant, his products, Andre, the supplier, we supply his charcuterie items. And then also Le Fromagerie au Fond de Bois.
Okay, yeah.
A Didier. We also showcase his products.
All right, well, from charcuterie and cheese back to our lava cakes.
Right.
So we've got our batter made.
Yep.
Now, what do we do now?
Okay, so we've got our dishes.
Yeah, our little ramekins, or I like to
little-
use these kind of vintage.
I love them.
So do I. That's why I saved them from the
That
boutique.
teal is almost the same color as the shop, so good call. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these and we're gonna spray these bad boys really well. Now, you wanna make sure that you can go a little heavy-handed with spraying these, that's totally fine. Because the goal is really you really don't want these to stick.
And then that's why we're flouring them.
Exactly, yeah. Now, if you wanted to as well, you could also dust these with cocoa
Okay.
as well too.
I've seen it done with granulated sugar as well.
For certain things, yeah, I think that would work. It would get a little bit more melty. The flour just makes sure that it creates a barrier.
Now, will the flour show up in the end result?
Yes, absolutely. So that's why, dusting these with like even a mixture of flour and cocoa wouldn't be a bad idea. The golden rule for me, I like to say anyways, is if flour, when you're using excess flour for anything like dusting or throwing on a board when you're shaping bread, is that you always want to try to use as little flour as possible because it'll actually change your recipe. And if you were supposed to use that much flour, it would be in the recipe.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, lava cakes, do they have to be chocolate? Are there any other versions that you can make?
You need the stability of the chocolate to really kind of help form it.
Gotcha.
However, you could flavor this in a multitude of ways. You could put espresso powder in it. You could, like in your chocolate, you could put Nutella and put that in there. You could, like any sort of really strong flavor, if you want to do Grand Marnier, you would put I would sub out your vanilla for Grand Marnier.
Okay.
And some orange zest, and then you could do like a chocolate and orange lava cake.
And you can switch up the chocolate. So this is like a semi-sweet today. You could use milk chocolate or a white chocolate as well? Or?
You could, but your recipe would change a little bit.
Okay.
Typically, if this was a semi-sweet chocolate, I would add a little bit more cocoa to the flour mix just to
Okay.
kind of help bump it up a little. So we've got that. all done and clean as you go. And now, normally, you would have, if you were a scooper, you could either use a scoop, or I'm going to use this ladle here, just so that I'm consistent with my size, my portioning. And
now, Chef, is there a trick not to get drips off your ladle?
yeah, you just scrape the bottom of your ladle up against your bowl.
Perfect.
So easy peasy. First, make sure that I'm dividing it up evenly in between all of your ramekins. And you don't have to bake these all off at once. They freeze beautifully, so you can totally make a batch.
That was my next question, was is this something that you can make ahead of time and hold? And you just answered my question.
100%. You can absolutely just like make a batch of these in, just grab like an aluminum pan, or little aluminum tart pans work really well as well too. So, but you're wanting something roughly about 6 ounces in size, right?
And that being said, I guess the molten cake, the whole idea is that when you crack it open, that it has that nice little ooze to it.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Itself.
And for those that are worried, and the cake batter that isn't fully cooked, are you eating raw cake in the ooze out?
No, you're not, because it is hot. It's just not set.
That's perfect. It's for people who've asked me that before, going, molten cake, it's just cupcakes that you took out too early. And I was like, well, no, not exactly, but
not exactly. There's no issues of foodborne illnesses or whatever.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
So we're not putting these in the oven right away, are we?
The trick to this is actually it has to set. Minimum a half an hour, but I would really say, like, in order to get like a really good set, you want to have it sit for at least 4 hours.
Okay.
I would let these sit in my fridge 2 days.
Okay.
But if you do freeze them, if you have extras that you've frozen, you can just put it in the fridge. It'll thaw slowly overnight, and then you can just bake it off the next day.
So we were going to let these set for a little bit, and we'll be right back.
All right, so time to plate.
So you're running the knife around because it will stick a little bit, won't it?
Yep. And so, yeah, you want it to make sure that it's going to come out of the bowl or plate as easy as possible. So hopefully, if I did my job right, now there we go.
Look at that. Nice.
Yeah.
And a little bit of ice cream.
And a little bit of ice cream. And this is my birthday cake ice cream. So
Lovely. How many flavors do you have going right now, Patty?
we usually have about 15 flavors,
Okay,
I
cool.
think. Yeah,
Right on.
so it's pretty easy to get carried away with all the delicious flavors that we make. So,
Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining me today,
You're
Patty.
welcome.
I learned so much, and I'm excited for you and your new adventure with
Thank
the
you.
charcuterie shop, and all the best of luck.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being invited onto
thank
the
you.
show, and I've had a lot of fun too. So, would love to do this again. Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Let's just crack in and see if
Absolutely,
we've got it molten
right?
or not.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There we go.
All
Cheers.
right, cheers. Thank you. That was good.